Welcome to this FS tutorial for the online sample exams with City and Guilds. City and Guilds have a number of sample online tests for their Functional Skills Level 1 Maths test, as well as for a number of their other functional skills tests. All you need to do is type in City and Guilds Functional Skills into Google. The first result, normally the first result that pops up, will take you straight to the page that has all the tests on it. If we just scroll down, and if we go to where it says Level 1, we expand on this, you can see all the different tests that are available. We're obviously interested in the maths test, so that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to start with sample 1, and we're just going to work our way from beginning to end. I'll go through as much of the maths as I can with you while we do this. So when you first load up, you'll see a couple of confirmation screens. You just need to click OK and confirm. This is because it's a sample test. It's not a real test. It's not going to record your results. It's also not going to give you your results back. It's not going to tell you how you've done. It's just a sample so you can get a feel for how the test actually works. You can see it says the length of the assessment is 1 hour and 40 minutes. You can also see that where it says the time, I can't, well I've got this up, there's about 4 hours that it actually gives you to do the sample. So it gives you much longer than you actually need. This is just the tutorial. It shows you what all the different buttons do. You just click next to it each time. It's fairly self-explanatory. It's fairly intuitive. There are some areas where it isn't, and when we get onto those, I'll explain those to you and explain what some of the issues are that come up. Generally, you're just going to work through the questions. You're normally going to use the next button. One button that you don't want to use until you're absolutely sure you're finished is the finish button in the top right hand corner. That button will complete the exam. I'll show you that in a bit as well. If you're struggling to see the screen and you prefer different contrasts, if you click on the preferences button, there are loads of different setups you can see. Now, the defaults have more colours in them, and I prefer them to any other possible result, but you can choose what you like. It's obviously up to you. So here we have the first question. It's a question about a sales competition for staff in a shop. People who work in the shop have to sell a number of toys, and below we have a table which tells you the cost of the toys and how many were sold. First question just wants you to fill in the total number of toys that each person sold and the value of the toys that each person sold. So all we're doing for the first column is just adding the two numbers together. So 8 and 21 is 29, 16, 16, 32, etc., etc. For the second column, what we need to do is there are going to be two separate parts. The teddy bears are £10 each, so we're going to times the number of teddy bears by £10. Then the rabbits are £7 each, so we can times the number of rabbits by £7. Now, as you can see, the calculator that's built in, by pressing the little calculator button, that's how that came up. Calculators built into the test does not apply BODMAS rules. It will just do the sums in the order that you type them in. So it's very important you don't just type the sum in and assume it's going to use BODMAS. Now you have to work out how to type the sum in to get the answer that you want. So the answer to the first one is £227. Okay. Now, unlike in the old City and Guilds test where it used to automatically record everything you on the calculator, this one doesn't seem to. I'm not saying it doesn't, but there's no obvious place where it's recorded stuff. So if you want to show you're working out, you have to type it in yourself. Okay. I don't think this is quite as nice when they have a calculator that saved everything you typed, but yeah, that's how it works now. So you have to type in everything that you're doing yourself. So you can see I've typed in some there, 8 times 10 plus 7 times 21, which equals 227. Okay. So we're just going to look at all the rest of them as well. So we've got 8 times 10, 10 times 10 is 100, 24 times 7 is going to give you 168, so it's 268. We've then got 15 times 10, which is 150, 8 times 7, which is 56, so we're going to have 206. Obviously, feel free to use a calculator for each of these. To be blunt, I just need practice for the mental arithmetic, but you do whatever you want and make sure you get it right. Yeah. So it's always a good idea to use a calculator to take your answer, even if you do it in your head first. Just be careful, is what I'm saying. So if we look at this next one, we've got 11 times 10, 110, 22 times 7 is going to give you 154, so it's 264 altogether. What I would say when you show you're working, it is important to show you're working out, because if you make a mistake, it means you may pick up marks. You may not, depends how much working you show. The clearer you make it, the better. But I wouldn't spend hours and hours on the working out. Yeah. Now, this question's now asked us to pick who've won the competition. One person has sold more toys than anyone else, that was Mohan, and one person has made more sales, a greater value of sales, which was Charlie. You can pick either one as the winner. It doesn't matter. There are two possible options there. You can pick the person who sold the most toys, or you can pick the person who made the most money. Okay, what matters is that you then put the reason in, the correct reason. So if you pick Mohan, you then want to say that it sold the most toys. If you pick Charlie, you want to say that they made the most money. I'm going to pick Charlie because I think, it's a shop. Money's kind of where it all comes from. We don't know the profit margins on toys, because technically you want to work out who made the most profit. But based on what we've got, I'm going to pick most money. You could have picked Mohan and said that he sold the most toys. Either is valid. It doesn't matter which one you picked. Okay, so sometimes you do have choices. But they were the only real two options that you could have picked there. Anybody else would have been wrong. You want to get 15% of the prize money? There are loads of ways to work out 15%. Hopefully you've done this a few times before. Personally, I like to times two numbers together and then divide it by 100. Okay? But you could divide either of the numbers by 100 and then times the result by the other number. You could work out 10% and then 5% as well if you wanted to. So 10% of 272 is 27.2. Half of that for the 5%, so half of 27.2 is going to give you 13.6, and add the two together to get you your answer. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way you do it. You can either times them both together, divide by 100. Okay, divide one of the numbers by 100, and then times it by the other number. Work out 10% because you know that 10% is just divided by 10. Then half it to work out the 5%, and then add those two answers together. Either way, you're going to get 40.8. 40.8, remember, is £40 and 80 pence, not £40 and 8 pence. 40.8 is £40 and 80 pence. Okay? So that's the answer. And again, to show you're working, you just show the one method that you use. You won't type all these different things in, but just so you get a rough idea of what you could possibly have done to work it out. Yeah, there are loads of ways. You'll also notice that in order to do the divide sign, if we go to this little symbol box, that's where the divide sign is. So if you need to do any more complicated symbols, where that little horseshoe thing is, click the drop down arrow, and there are loads of different symbols, including times, plus, minus. Most of those on the keyboard and easy enough to find. A divide tends to be the one that people are stuck with. If you use the backslash for your divide, that's fine as well. Okay, as long as people can clearly see what you've done to work things out. For a lot of the questions, you will actually get the marks if you get the answer correct, even without the working out. I'm going to say always, if it's a yes or no question, you definitely need to put working out in, otherwise you might not get the marks even if you're right. If you make a mistake, we all do it, I've done it before, make a silly mistake and you haven't put working out down, you're going to lose all the marks as well. So working out is very important. Getting the answers right is more important, and getting all the answers right is more important. So if you're struggling to work out what you need to write down, you know what the sum was, you've done the sum, you're confident you got your answer right, fill in the answer and come back and do the working out later. Okay, maybe go through the rest of the questions first. If this is a very simple sum, low level of marks, just fill in your answer, come back and fill in your working out later. Yeah, it's not necessarily the best way to do it, but it's better than spending ages worrying about what you should be putting down for your working out. Okay, so that's the first little tab done. Yeah, you can see there were 3 questions there. Now we've got a table, so you will get a table in one of the questions. I think you'll only get the one table, but you would definitely get a table. All this table is asking us to do is put the results in order, do the number of toys that each person sold, and the value of the toys that each person sold. It would also like you to include the winner and the prize money. So, the results in order depends on who you picked. If you pick Mohan and the number of toys, then you have to do it in the order of who sold the most number of toys. If you pick Charlie for the value of the toys, then you have to do it in the order of the value of the toys that they all sold. So basically it depends who you picked for your winner, which order it's in. But the results must be in order. I don't think alphabetical order would count. I suppose technically it is order, but yeah, it depends on who you pick for your winner, whether it's the number of toys or whether it's the value of the toys. So you're going to decide which one you use for your winner. Well, you can check which one you use for your winner, and then you can sort them into that order. Because I picked Charlie, I'm going to use the order of the value of the toys. So that's the table that I'm going to do. You can see you can use those buttons to add rows and add columns. Okay. You can also format your cells to make them look pretty. You can make the titles bold. Various other things. Okay, but let's make sure we get all the information in there. So these are the people. I need to work out which order I'm going to put them in. Like I say, the two possibilities are Mo and Charlie. I pick Charlie, so Charlie goes first. Then we've got Mohan. Then we've got Abby. Then we've got Ross. Then we've got Namita. Okay? Because that's the order of the value. So Charlie made the most money. Then it was Mohan. Then it was Abby. Then it was Ross. Then it was Namita. Okay? Now, it's not the quickest device in the world, so you will occasionally have to go backwards and forwards to work out the what order they were in, to check what you did. I would strongly recommend, if you don't have paper on your desk when you start for this test, raise your hand, ask for some paper. There's absolutely nothing wrong with making notes. Also, when you're producing the table, it may help, if you're not sure what you're going to do, to draw the table first on a piece of paper. Give yourself a rough sketch and work out how it's going to be laid out. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can't take paper into the test with you, but you can ask for paper while you're in the test. Okay, and you can then write down what you're going to do, what order everything's going to be in. Okay. It'll also allow you to do some workings out on paper if you're not sure in your head. You can work out how you're going to present things. I would strongly recommend taking paper in with you. I do appreciate some people prefer to just do it straight on the PC and just flip back and forth. Whatever works for you, but you can get paper while you're in the test. Also, to be careful here, we're putting them in order, putting them on of the value sold. That means the order of the toys is not going to be in order, because you're putting the number of toys sold next to the person that sold that number of toys. Okay? So only one of these columns is going to be in order, which is the column that we used to determine who the winner was. Okay? All I need to do now is to make sure we've got everything that it asks for. So all I need to do now is add on the winner and the prize money. Now, there's only one winner, there's only one bit of prize money. So rather than putting it on the end column, which you could have done, you could have had an extra column that said winner, and then put the prize money next to Charlie or whatever. I'm going to put it underneath, and I'm going to say this is the winner, and this is the prize money that they won. Remember, the prize money is the money you worked out for 15%. Okay, so I'm just putting my pound signs on here. What you could have done is you could also put pound signs in the heading so that that whole column was pounds. Yeah? So it doesn't have to be where I put in front of each thing. You can just put pounds at the top in brackets, and then that would have been the whole thing in pounds. So just make sure we've got everything. The results are in order. We've got the total number of toys, we've got the total value of toys, and we've got the winner and the prize money. So that's everything we really need. Right, this sort of question comes up a lot. It wants us to show a check on one of the calculations that you use. You notice it's asking you to check one of the calculations, not one of the questions. So all we really need is we need one little bit, and we're just going to check that one part of that one calculation of that question. If you want to check the whole question, you're not going to lose marks, presuming you check it all correctly. And I know some of my students have expressed a preference to do that. Absolutely fine if that's what you want to do. But all you need to do is check one calculation from one of those questions. So you can see I've got a question there. Oops. So we can just undo it if we click on the undo button. So I pasted instead of copying there. So I'm going to copy that out by right clicking. So that's the sum. We added those together to get 227. Okay. That was from question 1. So I'm going to say I picked question 1. Now you don't really need to paste the original calculation into here. They will go back and check what the calculation was, or they may be able to work out what the calculation was. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a reverse calculation. So I've taken my answer, 227, instead of adding 147, I'm doing the opposite, so minus 147, and that takes me back to 80. So that's a reverse calculation done. Okay. So question 2 is about filing cabinets. Essentially, you've got a new office. You want to put the filing cabinets up. We've got some information. We're going to need this information to work out the answer to the question. So what is the length of the wall on each side of the door? Now the left-hand side of the door is very, very simple. It says 1.5 meters. So the answer for the left-hand side of the door is 1.5 meters. There's no working out you could possibly have done for that. It tells you the answer. So we don't really need to be working anything out. The right-hand side, however, hasn't got the length. What we do know is that the length on the left-hand side is 1.5, the width of the door is 1 meter, and the total length of the wall is 7 meters. So we can do some working for this. What we're going to do is we're going to take the total 7 meters, and then we're going to take away the 1 meter plus the 1.5 meters. So 1 plus 1.5 is 2.5. So we're going to end up with 7 minus 2.5. 7 minus 2.5 is going to give us 4.5 meters. So that's the answer. It's only a 2-mark question. If you get both those answers right, it doesn't really matter too much whether you put the work in or not on this particular question. I said 2 marks, 2 answers. If they're both right, you're fine. Obviously, if they're wrong, you probably won't get the marks for showing your working because it's only a 2-mark question. So it is important to show your working, but don't stress too much about it, yeah? Don't let it take up all the time in the exam. Okay, so we've got the same thing here. This time we've got to put the filing cabinets into that space. So we've got 2 different types of filing cabinet. We've got 4 narrow filing cabinets that are each 50 centimetres wide, and 6 wide filing cabinets, which are each 80 centimetres wide. Filing cabinets are 150 centimetres tall, but that doesn't matter. We're just trying to fit them along the side of the wall. The wall is high enough to fit them in. We're not putting them on top of each other. So 150 centimetres isn't really important. What's important is the width of the filing cabinets. So 1 metre is 100 centimetres, which means that the 1.5 metre gap is actually a 150 centimetre gap. That's on the left-hand side of the door. And the 4.5 metre gap is actually a 450 centimetre gap. That's on the right-hand side. Just say that really. Yeah, right-hand side is 450 centimetres, left-hand side is 150 centimetres. So first thing we can do, the narrow filing cabinets very clearly fit into that small place quite easily. So the narrow filing cabinets are 50 centimetres each, 150 divided by 50. How many 50s fit into 150? 3. So I could get 3 narrow filing cabinets into that space with no room left over. So it's making very efficient use of the space. There's no gap left. I've used all the 150 centimetres, which is why I've chosen just to quickly fit 3 of the narrow filing cabinets in there. Next bit of space that's left is the 450 centimetres. It's a little bit more complicated. However, I know I've got those 80 centimetre filing cabinets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 450, I'm going to divide it by 80, and that'll tell me how many wide filing cabinets will fit into that space. So if I take 450 and divide it by 80, it gives me 5.625. There you go. Now, I can't fit 0.625 of a filing cabinet in, and we're not about to start cutting them into pieces. So basically, the 5.65 is important, but it's the 5 that I'm interested in, the whole number. So I can fit 5 complete wide filing cabinets into that space. What I then need to do is I need to work out how much space is left over. So now I can fit 5 in. So 2 ways of working out how much space is left over. I could do 5 times by 80, because I know they're each 80 centimetres wide. Or I can do 5.65 minus off the 5 that I originally had, which would give me 0.625, and then times the 0.65 by the 80. So I can either do 5 times 80 to work out how much space I've used, or I can do 0.625 times 80 to work out how much space is left over. It doesn't matter which way. So I'm going to do the 0.65 times 80, which is going to give me, oh, that's gone wrong. Yeah, that's not quite right. So we can type in the 0.625 times by 80, which gives me 50 centimetres, that is. The other way you could have done it, like I say, was the 80 times by 5, which would give me 400, so that would mean we've used 400 centimetres, meaning there are 50 centimetres left over. Either way, you're getting the same answer. So if there's 50 centimetres left over, that means I can fit one more narrow filing cabinet into that space as well. So I've used 3 narrow filing cabinets on the left-hand side, and nothing else. I've used 5 wide filing cabinets on the right-hand side, and 1 narrow filing cabinet on the right-hand side. And that's filled up 100% of the space. I've used every centimetre of space there, so I can't possibly fit any more in anywhere. So, I'm just going to make my working look a little clearer. The easier the working is to follow, the easier it makes everyone's life. It's more important that you've put some working in there than it is to make sure it's very clear and easy to follow. I say I don't want you spending hours and hours getting the working out looking just right. But at the same time, trying to be methodical means that if you do have to go back to a question, it is going to make it easy for you to check what you've done as well. And it might make your life easier too. So being methodical, having a easy to read layout could make the exam easier for you as well. And so try and do it where you can. But I say don't spend hours over it. So you can see there were 4 narrow filing cabinets in the first place and 6 wide filing cabinets. Okay, I've used 5 wide filing cabinets and all 4 narrow filing cabinets. The next question is asking me how many filing cabinets are left over. So very, very simply, 6 minus 5 is 1. So there's 1 wide filing cabinet left over. 4 minus 4 is 0, so there aren't any narrow filing cabinets left over. Oops, 6 minus 5, yeah. So there are answers, okay? 0 narrow ones left over, 1 wide one left over. Next question. Now this can be very, very time consuming, I'm afraid. It could be a real pain. All that's telling you in the top left hand corner is that if you were given a piece of paper, the graph paper will be 2 centimetres wide for one of the large boxes. Okay? That was the actual size it's meant to be. Each one of those boxes is taking up 2 centimetres. And the scale on the graph is telling you that each one of those 2 centimetre boxes is 1 metre wide in real life. That's a scale, okay? So we need to know again what the dimensions of the filing cabinets are. So they're 150 centimetres wide, tall, sorry, that's for both of them. Then the narrow ones are 50 centimetres wide, and the wide ones are 80 centimetres wide. So we're going to have to draw these into scale into the box. Now, because we know the size, each half box is about 50 centimetres. So we can draw some squares in that are they're all going to be 3 boxes tall, whether it's narrow or wide one. The narrow ones will be 1 of those small boxes wide, not the tiny boxes, but the half boxes, like that. And that's roughly a 50 centimetre space. Now what you still see, if you look at the drawing yourself on the screen, your next lines aren't quite lined up properly, okay? So I would say they can't expect you to line everything up perfectly when the drawing itself isn't lined up perfectly. It doesn't make sense. Do the best you can. There's a small margin for error that's allowed. As far as I recall, it's between 2 and 5%, which is not very large at all. So there's only a very small margin for error, so do try and get it as right as you can. But you're not going to be able to get everything perfect. Like I say, if you look at the original drawing, the door and the sides of the wall aren't quite lined up to the edges, which makes it really awkward. I wish they had done that properly, but hey, let's say you will be allowed a small margin for error as well. So because the floor's not quite lined up, because the sides of the walls aren't kind of, because the door's not quite lined up, try and get everything right. So each of the narrow filing cabinets should be 5 little squares wide. Each of the wide filing cabinets should be 8 little squares wide. And all of them should be 15 little squares tall, or 3 of the half boxes tall. Okay? And that's because it's 1 metre wide for the large box. The large box contains 10 little squares. So each little square must be 10 centimetres. So if the narrow filing cabinets are 50 centimetres wide, that's 5 little squares. And if the wide filing cabinets are 80 centimetres wide, that's 8 little squares. So that's what you're going to try and fit in. I'd say it is very picky. It's very fine detail here. This is more about getting things just as they should be rather than about performing any calculations. But this is still maths. Yeah, it's still important. And like any other maths question, accuracy is important. We do need to try and get it as accurate as we can. That said, this is exceptionally time consuming, so if you find that you're running out of time, you get up to a question like this, it might be worth skipping it and coming back to it later. Okay, so clearly that's not lined up quite correctly. The width of the thing doesn't look quite the same. I know each one should be 8 wide, and that end one looks more like it's almost 10 wide, so let's just that a little bit. I said you will be allowed a small margin for error. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at the same time, it needs to be fairly close. You can't just put some boxes on there and go, oh, that's right, it's a box. It needs to be roughly the right size. That's about right. It's not the best drawing tool in the world. What we're also going to need to do is going to need to label the diagram. So when it comes to labeling, I'm going to say where the narrow filing cabinets are, where the wide filing cabinets are. I'm also going to point out what the lengths of some of the important lines are. probably two things worth remembering. This is not an English test. You can spell things incorrectly. You won't have marks deducted as long as the person can read what it is you're trying to write. And although they are checking your use of IT tools to perform maths, it's not an IT test as such. So there's a bit of leeway on how you use the tools. Okay, so I've said which of the cabinets are which. I've put some important dimensions on there. I've put the width of the wide filing cabinets on them as well. I've drawn these lines to exactly 5 wide and 8 wide, just so we can the examiner can see exactly what I've tried to do, and I've drawn the boxes. You can see that I've got the scale right. As it happens, the next question will ask about scale anyway, but still, it's important to get the drawing right, as it won't always do that. So I think that's pretty much as clear as I can be on that. So the next question is how do we show a check of the scale that we use in question 4? Explain how you know one of your lines and diagrams is the correct scale length. So what I explained at the start, it tells us that the graph paper, one of those large squares, is 2 centimeters wide. It also tells us that the scale is, across one of the large squares, that is equal to 1 meter. So just to show you, scale 1 meter, and the distance between those two lines is 2 centimeters. Okay, so we can say that 2 centimeters, or every 2 centimeters of graph paper, is equal to 1 meter. If 2 centimeters is equal to 1 meter, 2 centimeters is also equal to 10 squares. There are 10 little squares in that large block, which means that 10 squares is equal to 1 meter. If 10 squares is equal to 1 meter, then 10 squares is also equal to 100 centimeters, because 1 meter is 100 centimeters. Or we could say that 1 square is 1 meter divided by 10. Which is that 1 square is equal to 100 centimeters divided by 10. Which means that 1 square is 10 centimeters. If we use the sizes that we actually used, 5 squares was the width of the narrow cabinets, so that's 50 centimetres, that's one of the lines. That's all you need to put because it only asks you for one line. However, I'm going to mention all the 3 ones that we really focused on. 8 squares was 80 centimetres, so that was the width of the wide filing cabinets. And then finally, the height of all the filing cabinets was 15 squares, or 150 centimetres. So that's how we knew we got the right sizes. We worked out how big one square was, and that allowed us to work out how long each of the lines should be. Okay, final question. So we've completed 2 sections already. We've just got one last section to do, and this one's going to be on means. Okay, we can tell it's going to be means just by looking straight away at the numbers, all lined up like that. So what it wants us to do is it wants to work out the mean scores for how easy each of these different cameras is to use. There are 4 different cameras. We've got the mean scores. There are a different number of scores for each one, and it tells you how many numbers there are. So the 15 people tested the Hex, whereas only 10 tested the Cam XL. So we're going to add up the totals, and then we're going to divide it by however many testers there were. Okay, so what we will do is we'll count how many numbers there actually are and make sure the number of numbers is equal to the number of testers, because it should be. So I'm just going to write this all out. Okay, and once we've written that all out, we're just going to count how many numbers there are, make sure there are 15 of them there. And yeah, sure enough, there are 15 numbers. So now we're going to total them up. So 5 and 7 is 12, plus 4 is 16, plus 8 is going to give us 24, plus 5 is 29, plus 7 is 36, plus 6 is 42, plus 5 is 47, plus 7 is 54, plus 8 is, brains died, 62, plus 6, 68, 4, 72, 82, 92, 99. There you go. Again, you can use the calculator, you can see it in the top right hand corner, click on that and you can plus it all up all you want. What I would say is add it up, press equals, don't do any division until you've got the answer. Okay, what we are going to do then, once we've got our answer, and I write that down in the working out box, is we're going to do that answer, which is 99 divided by the number of testers, which is 15. So 15 into 90 is 6. So if there are 6 15s in 19, then there are 0.6 in 9. So the answer is going to be 6.6. Again, feel absolutely free to use a calculator. Just click on the button. Type in the sum you want to do. So it's 99 divided by 15, 6.6. So yeah, I'm right, good. Okay, so I'm just trying to brush up on my arithmetic a bit. It's a bit out of practice. But you use calculator as much as you want. You can also take a calculator into test with you. It has to be a basic calculator, not scientific's okay, but as long as it's not programmable in any way. So you can take your own calculator into the test, but there is one built in as well. So feel free to use whichever you find easiest to use. Also, don't try that trick online where they put an iPhone into a calculator. They'll spot it. It's not a big room where you do the exam, and invigilators aren't stupid. So don't try and cheat. Okay. Also, when you're working out the means, once you finish it, you got an answer. It's not the best thing to do. It's not the best way of judging things. But if you just take a quick look at the number you got and the numbers that are in that column, does it look like it's somewhere in the middle of those numbers? Does it look like it's fallen relatively well? So you can see the Hex 11 numbers are slightly lower than the Apollo SX numbers, and the mean is slightly lower. So it looks right. It feels right. If you add them all up and you divide it and your answer is 12, and 12 is higher than any of the numbers that were there, clearly you've worked out the meaning correctly. So likewise, if you got 3 and there's no scores lower than 4, then you must have done something wrong as well. So there are ways to check your answer without spending hours going over it again. Just have a look. Does the number look like it's about right? Okay, it's not the best check in the world, but it's a check that's quite quick to do. This is the last one. Again, just check we've got 12 numbers there. And we do. And 5 and 7 is 12, plus 2 is 14, plus 7 is 21, plus 3 is 24, plus 6 is 30, plus 5 is 35, plus 5 is 40, plus 8 is 48, plus 5 is 53, plus 2 is 55, plus 5 is 60. So we end up with 60 divided by 12. Well, 60 divided by 12 is 5. Okay, and now these are the answer boxes. This is where we actually have to put our answers that we just worked out. So make sure you always fill in these answer boxes. That's actually a very nice bit of working out there. It's all done above. When you're doing means, you don't have to add everything up anyway, so it's means are easy to show you're working for because you need those totals, you need those other things. You are going to put them in the working box. So you've got them there, so you know if you've made a mistake, you can work out where you've gone wrong quite easily. And then we just put our answers in there. The next question is check your calculation again. We can do exactly the same that we did earlier. I'm going to take one calculation. Remember, I don't need to take everything, just one calculation. So here I've got 99 divided by 15 equals 6.6. I'm going to do it backwards. So I'm going to do 6.6 times 15 equals 99. I've just taken my answer and I've done the opposite that I did to get it, and I've ended up back with the actual sum. I would encourage you to actually do the check as well. Don't just put the numbers in, okay? Because it is quite easy to make a mistake, and if you do the check and it turns out something does go wrong, well, then you can change it. That's the whole purpose of it. Okay, you'll probably get some sort of chart. Bar chart is the most common one that you're going to use, but you might have to use a line graph or a scatter graph. I am going to be doing some other videos, so if you check some of those, you may well see some of the other types of graph that you used. But bar chart's most common. I've gone to the edit axis button to do this. I'm just going to increase the number of divisions that I'm using. So the number of divisions are the ones that are going to show the numbers against them. The divisions is then the divisions within the numbered divisions. So how many times is the division split up to, and subdivisions would be divisions within inside that. I don't really need the subdivisions, to be honest with you. I do want to see the numbers, okay? And because of the numbers that we picked, I'm going to do it up in twos, okay? Now, I don't know how well you can see the graph paper on the video, but basically each of the gaps between 0 and 2 has 20 little squares, or in other words, there are 10 little squares between each one, which means each one little square is worth 0.1. Because each little square is worth 0.1, if the answer is, for example, 6.6, I need to move it to where 6 is, and then just go up 6 little squares. Again, like with when you were drawing the graph, it's not easy to get the lines exactly where you want them. I would say it's a little more important to try and get them as close as possible, but bear in mind you've got the width of the lines to take into consideration and other things. So I've tried to move this line so it's on top of the 6th line, and then this one's going to be 6.2, so it's going to be the second box up from the 6. Okay, so that's my 6.6, my 8, and my 6.2, and the 5, like the 8, is going to fall bang on where the 5 is, obviously, or as close as I can get it. Again, the width of the borders is actually bigger than the size of the boxes, which makes it a little awkward, but you'll figure it out. Okay, it's not just about getting the bars in the right place. We need to present the graph properly, just like you would if you were drawing it yourself, which means that we need axis titles, we need category titles, we're going to colour in the bars, and we're going to put an actual title on the graph as well. All of these things are needed, just like as if you were drawing the graph on graph paper. It's a lot quicker than drawing the boxes on the scale plan, you'll notice. This is actually fairly straightforward once you get the hang of it. But we will need to do text boxes for the categories and things like that. So the other advantage potentially of having paper is you could write down the names of all the cameras. It might make life a bit easier. So what I'm going to do here is grab onto this bottom corner box, and I can twist the whole box around so it goes at the side. Okay, so the next question now wants us to fill in some more data. They've given us some other means. They want us to put in the information that we worked out. So we worked out the means of how easy it was to use. And then it wants to write down what order the things are in. So the highest score would come first, the lowest score would come fourth. So we need the R means, which are 6.5, 8, 6.2, and 5. So let's put those in there. 6.6, sorry. 8, 6.2, and 5. And then it's just putting them in order. So, which was the highest score? 8 is first, 6.6 is second, 6.2 is third, and 5.0 is fourth. And then for the ones that are already filled in, same thing. 7.6 is first, 6.9 is going to be second, 6.0 is third, and 5.5 is going to come last, or fourth. The shop stocks all 4 cameras. Customer wants a camera with good picture quality, that's easy to use, weighs less than 1 kilogram, and costs less than £500. What is the probability or chance that a customer will find a camera she wants in the shop? So we're looking for ones which are good picture quality and easy to use. You can see the Japper is not really either of those. CamXL, not bad to use, and the Hex, middle of the road for both. The Apollo SX, though, is both very good, very easy to use, and very good picture quality. If we look at the prices and the weights, we'll also see that the Hex is too expensive, the CamXL is too heavy. The Japper does fit the criteria, but is got poor picture quality and poor ease of use, whereas the Apollo SX is underpriced, underweight, so it fits those criteria, and it got very high scores on picture quality and very high score on how easy it is to use. 8 out of 10 is a pretty high score. Batteries don't last so long, but the customer's not asking for that. So I would say that it's certain. You could also argue that it's likely. This is one of the other problems with functional skills. It's not always a definitive answer. I would say it's certain because the Apollo SX was rated very highly for its ease of use. It was rated very highly for its picture quality. It is definitely under a kilogram, and it is definitely less than £500. The shop does stock that camera, therefore you will find that camera. That camera meets all the criteria, so it's certain they'll find a camera that they want. Now, you could probably argue likely as well. You could argue that it's definitely under the price, it's definitely under the weight, but the ease of use and the picture quality, just because the mean score was quite high doesn't mean everybody thought it was high. There might be some people that thought it wasn't easy to use. Sometimes you'll use an item, your friend might use it, you think it's dead easy, really intuitive, and your friend thinks actually that's awful to use, that's really, really horrible. So just because lots of people thought it was easy to use doesn't mean it is easy to use, and just because lots of people thought the picture quality was fantastic doesn't mean the picture quality is fantastic. You may be looking for different things from the picture quality. So you could also argue it's likely, okay, because most people thought it was easy to use and most people thought the picture quality was good, therefore it's likely. Or you could argue it's certain, because so many people thought the picture quality was good. I mean, 8.5 and 8 are massive scores. So many people thought those were good things. They are good characteristics of that camera. Because that camera is in the shop, they will find it. So they're the two different ways of looking at that particular question. And that's basically it. So as long as you can argue your point, whenever it asks you for an explanation, it normally means there's more than one possible answer. You just need to justify that answer using maths, using numbers. Okay? And that is the entire test. You can now click finish once you're done. Just to point out, I'm fairly good with my maths. I would say myself, a bit arrogant maybe, but you know, I do teach it. It's taken me around 55 minutes to complete this test. If you're coming out of the test after 10 minutes, you've probably not done something as thoroughly as you should have done. It should be taking you, I'm not saying it should take you much more than this to do the test. It's an hour and a half test. If it takes you an hour, that seems completely reasonable. Okay, I have been trying to talk through it a little bit, go back and forth a little bit. But if it's taking you much less than an hour, if you're doing it in half an hour, if you're doing it in 20 minutes, you're probably not doing something as thoroughly as you should be. Okay, and you want to be looking at your answers. If you finished after a half hour, maybe you've drawn the things very quickly. Maybe you skip them altogether. Maybe it's time to go back to them and finish them off because they are very time consuming. But there's time to do something else. You've missed something or you need to be doing something more carefully. Okay? And bear in mind, I haven't really checked any of my answers. So an hour and a half is a reasonable time to be doing this test. Okay? Now when you click the finish button, it will give you a confirmation window. If you click finish, that's it. Your exam is finished. You cannot go back. Okay, this is doing this because it's a sample test, but once you click finish and you click OK, that sends the exam off. So I'll give you one chance to confirm. If you confirm, the test is over.